From golden child to boarding school. How my sister ruined it all. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I read a story online not long ago that rattled something loose in me, and I realized I couldn't keep mine bottled up anymore. This is it, my one and only Reddit post. I'm writing it because putting everything into words helps me breathe. I've done a few rounds of counseling, and every time I sat with a therapist and talked about this, it felt like I set down a heavy box I'd been holding since I was a kid. So I figured I'd try the same here. If nothing else, maybe some other kid who feels invisible will read this and know he isn't crazy. My name doesn't really matter, so call me Jake. I turned 18 this year and finally moved out of my parents' place. That apartment may be tiny and loud, with water pipes that groan like a haunted house, but the key is mine. I keep it on a lanyard and twirl it when I'm anxious, a little reminder that a door exists in this world that only I can open. I've got a little sister who's roughly 10 years younger than me. She was not planned. The pregnancy nearly didn't make it to term. My mom, let's call her Linda, went in and out of the hospital so many times that summer I lost count. I wasn't in the rooms where the doctors gave their warnings, but I heard the whispers later. Torn up body, dangerous blood pressure, the kind of complications that turn a celebration into a coin toss. When my sister, let's call her Ashley, was finally born, the doctors told Mom she couldn't have any more babies. The delivery almost took my mom with it. When you nearly lose something, you clamp down with both hands. That's what my parents did. From day one, their world spun around Ashley like she was the sun and the rest of us were lucky to orbit. I became the other kid. I don't say that for drama. That's exactly how it felt. If you've ever lived in a house where the volume knob turns up for one person and down for everyone else, you know that weird quiet, that fake smile quiet. That was our kitchen, our living room, our car rides. It was everywhere. At first, I tried to be a good big brother. I made silly faces to make Ashley laugh. I learned to hold a bottle without dropping it. I fetched diapers like a tiny butler. People patted my head and said I was such a helper. And for a little kid, that compliment goes far. But compliments don't fill the empty space where your birthday should go. My 11th birthday is where the rot really set in. I remember the cake like a photograph. Frosting that was the exact color of a cartoon sky, sugar pearls, my name in a shaky cursive my mom did herself. The room smelled like pizza and candle wax. Someone turned off the lights. The match flared. My dad, Mark, started singing. And then Mom slid the cake right in front of Ashley. She was 2 and already had a practiced cry for anything that wasn't hers. Let her do it, Jake, Mom whispered, urgent and smiling at the same time. She'll be so upset if she doesn't. I didn't want to. I said so. I was told not to be selfish. Ashley blew out my candles. Mom relit them and pushed the cake back to me like a peace offering, but the wish was gone. A wish is one moment, not a do-over. We ate cake. People clapped. I pretended it didn't matter. The next year it happened again, and the next, until it turned into a family joke I wasn't allowed to laugh at. Ashley's turn first. They'd say it with that sing-song tone grown-ups use to grease the wheels of a bad idea. It wasn't just the candles. Ashley got presents on my birthdays, actual gifts with ribbons and notes, because, according to my parents, she's still little and needs to feel included. When I asked why I didn't get anything on hers, Dad shrugged and said, "You're a boy. Boys don't care about this stuff." I'm old enough now to call that what it was, a lazy excuse wrapped in a stereotype. At the time, it landed like a verdict. Boys don't care. So if I cared, maybe I wasn't the right kind of boy. Venue-wise, it was always a place Ashley liked. Bright lights, sticky floors, cheap prizes, smiling mascots with eyes that didn't blink. By the time I was 14, it felt like she got 2 birthdays a year and I got none. That logic leaked into regular life. If I wanted to see a movie, Ashley had to want to see it too, or we weren't going. If I wanted to go to the pool, Ashley had to be in the mood for water, or we stayed home. If I wanted the living room TV, it was available only if Princess had prior commitments. My sanctuary became my bedroom. I learned how to disappear behind a door. I bought a simple twist lock at the hardware store with the first cash I earned mowing lawns and installed it when my parents were out. When they noticed, they told me to take it off. The conversation ended the day Ashley burst in while I was changing and started shrieking. "Why are you naked?" she yelled, like I'd committed a crime in my own room. I pointed out the absurdity of punishing me for not wearing pants in my space, And for once the logic stuck. The lock stayed. Ashley developed what therapists later called a princess complex. I don't know the textbook name, but I know what it looks like. The world is a pantry and everyone else is a stepstool. She filed orders like she had staff. She gave me a nickname I hated and used it like a leash. If I resisted, she cried. If she cried, my parents arrived. If my parents arrived, I got in trouble. The system worked flawlessly for her. My parents tried outsourcing the problem once. They hired a teenage babysitter named Megan. Megan lasted 2 weeks. Ashley refused to listen, argued about bedtime like she was a union negotiator, and claimed Megan made her cry. When Megan quit, my parents tried to stiff her. Megan had a spine. She brought her mom and a neighbor, and they stood in our driveway until my parents wrote a check. After that, we got a new sitter, Chloe, who somehow outstubborned Ashley. Even then, I was still expected to cover any day you're not busy. That's when I started putting in extra hours at my part-time job stocking shelves at a hardware store, just so I could honestly say, I'm working. High school blurred past in C's and the occasional B. My parents didn't ask about homework unless a parent-teacher night forced it. And even then, most of the conversation was about how gifted Ashley was and how tired mom was. I'm not saying I was perfect. I slacked. I hid. I spent too many hours with a controller in my hands because beating a level felt like more progress than talking to anyone in my house. Graduation day showed up like a magic trick. Cap fits, tassel swings, flash goes off, applause. In the parking lot afterward, my parents told every other parent they were the reason I worked so hard. In a way, they were. I worked like a man counting down the days on a chalk wall. Then came my 18th birthday in July, the day the table finally flipped. I woke up that morning with a naive hope we'd go to my favorite restaurant. I should have known better. We ended up at the local knockoff Chuck E. Cheese, the same place they dragged me to for middle school celebrations, and, insult to injury, my graduation dinner. The room was loud with kids, the pizza was a circle of cardboard grief, and the arcade games were older than me. I fed quarters into a claw machine just to have something to do with my hands. When it was cake time, they set down a pink cake with white flowers. It had my name on it, sure, but the message was as clear as neon. This wasn't for me. There were 10 candles. 10. I was 18. They lit them, and, like a reflex that requires no thought, set the cake in front of Ashley. Something in me tore. Not a scream, not a shout. A snap you feel behind your ribs. I began to cry. Not the nice movie tear down one cheek. The kind of crying that takes your breath and makes your shoulders shake. The kind of crying you can't hide. I cried in front of my entire family. Silence fell so hard you could hear the soda machine humming. Faces floated. Confused, guilty, impatient, stunned. Words came out of me in clumps after that. 8 years worth, ugly and true. I don't remember the whole speech the way you don't remember every sentence in a house fire. But I remember the feeling of air rushing in after the window breaks. Then I walked outside and sat on the curb by our car. Asphalt radiated heat through my jeans. Relatives trickled out. Apologies came with excuses. We didn't know about the cake. It was covered. I said it didn't matter. They'd all watched. They watched as my birthdays were repurposed into Ashley Appreciation Days. They watched me pretend to be okay so the party wouldn't stall. They watched me get smaller. Why didn't you say something? An aunt asked. I did, I said. When I was 11. When I was 12. When I was 13. And then I stopped. Because what's the point of a complaint when the judge is your parents? Inside, I heard my name, drawn out, questioning. Dad came out into the light with the expression of a man who discovered the house has termites and wants to yell at the tree. You embarrassed your mother, he hissed. She's crying. I was still crying. Good, I said. Maybe she can understand how that feels. You made a scene, he said. Your scene made me, I said. For 8 years. That did it. The family turned on him like a flock of birds pivoting at once. People who had said nothing for years discovered their voices. He backed up to the glass doors. The wave went back inside toward my mother, and I stayed where the air felt cooler. My grandparents, Frank and Evelyn, sat beside me. They apologized for not seeing it sooner. I believed them and also didn't. Both things can be true. The sorry can be real and the delay unforgivable. 30 minutes later, my parents emerged, looking like they'd been left out in a storm. Mom's mascara smudged. Dad's jaw tight. They apologized. They offered a redo. The family wasn't satisfied, and neither was I. My Uncle Dave cleared his throat in a way that meant, say the rest. So my parents promised, no more candle theft, no more Ashley gifts on my day, no more venues picked for her. Another throat clear. They apologized for the cake and said they thought I didn't care about cake at my age. That line set me off again. My age isn't the problem, I said. You gave my birthday to someone else. That's the problem. I told them a redo was too late. You can't unblow candles or unmake a boy into the spare. Dad started to puff up and then deflated when the family snapped at him. My grandfather called it plain favoritism, black sheep, damage that can't be undone. He said the rest of the family was guilty, too, for going along. Mom tried to hug me, sobbing my name, and the family physically blocked her. It was strange and a little comforting to watch people form a wall for me. I also hated that I needed one. Inside, Ashley was eating cake and opening my presents. Yes, really. Someone had served her cake after I left. When a relative told her to stop, she threw a full-body tantrum. One of my gifts was a new smartphone. When she heard she couldn't keep it, she threw it at a wall. It shattered. This was months after she'd gotten her own new phone for her birthday. My grandparents shepherded me to their van, where I sat with the air conditioning on and watched a balloon bounce against the ceiling. That night, I told them I never wanted another birthday. They let me sleep on their couch. The spring squeaked. I slept anyway. The next weekend, they invited me to dinner and walked me into a surprise, a small, thoughtful party at a restaurant I actually like. My parents were there wearing apologetic smiles that looked stapled on. There was a chocolate cake with 18 candles and a banner with my name in block letters. They called it a belated birthday and graduation party. I put on happiness like a rented suit and tried to make it fit. One party can't erase 8 years. Ashley sat at the table like a thundercloud, and, instead of happy birthday, the whole table sang happy day. When I blew out the candles, she let out a shriek that could cut glass. They took her outside, then brought her back in with a face like a brick. They replaced my phone. They took hers away for a while. And then the family unveiled their big gesture. A car. Not a shiny dealership thing. A used white Volvo that had been cared for and then carefully refurbished. My grandfather did the work himself. New tires, fresh fluids, a tune-up. He'd even scrubbed the coffee stains from the carpet. I loved it like a dog loves the first open field. Ashley screamed again and demanded a car too. Mom hauled her to the bathroom. Dad looked like a man with a hangover in church. Relatives told my parents the truth. Ashley's behavior wasn't a mystery. It was a mirror. 2 days later, while the car was parked in our driveway, Ashley took a hammer to it. 2 side windows gone, windshield cracked into a spider web. My parents grabbed her and she tried to bite them. My grandpa's face when he saw the damage was the kind of quiet angry that makes you want to leave the planet. The consequence finally scaled to the crime. Ashley was grounded the rest of the summer, and in September they enrolled her in a boarding school with uniforms, rules, and no tolerance for theatrics. Mom cried oceans. Dad said it was time. For once, he meant it. Ashley hated everything about boarding school. The fabric that wasn't glittery, the schedules, the cameras, the reality that the world didn't adjust to her moods. She lied often and badly. When Mom tried to smuggle in junk food during visits, Ashley got caught with it, and my parents fought in the parking lot. Mom eventually stopped. The school kept their food healthy and their boundaries firm. Meanwhile, my parents paid to fix my car with an auto glass company and pretended the crack in our family windshield wasn't still there. In August, Grandpa Frank found me a job 40 miles away at his buddy's shop. It meant I had to move or live inside my Volvo. I chose to move. The apartment hunt was a maze. Landlords wanted me to have credit history I couldn't possibly have. Eventually, I signed for a studio after I opened a small credit card and put down money I'd saved from the hardware store. The place is loud and honest. I sleep like a person who knows he can lock his own door. My parents text sometimes. I answer rarely. When I do, the conversation feels like we're all walking across a frozen lake that creaks. My grandfather says they want me to forgive them so they can forgive themselves. I don't have that in me right now. You don't ask a kid to hand back the weight he finally set down. A year later, people asked for updates, so here's what I know. I'm okay. Better than okay some days. I've learned how to budget and buy the cheap brand of paper towels that don't disintegrate. I've learned that you can make a decent dinner out of eggs, rice, and frozen vegetables, and that a clean sink does more for your mental health than any motivational quote. I've learned the city bus route and the strength of my own legs. My parents and Ashley? That's a different story. Ashley tried everything to get out of boarding school. First she lied. Big sweeping stories with details that slid around like oil on water. Then she refused to participate. You'd be surprised how little the world bends when you go limp. Then she tried a hunger strike. She told the school she wouldn't eat until our parents came to take her home. Mom almost grabbed her keys to go rescue her baby. Dad stood in the doorway and said no. The hunger strike wilted after 2 days when cafeteria smells overpowered stubbornness. The school had strict food rules. No candy, no junk, no just this once. A pediatrician had warned my parents in the spring that Ashley was headed for health trouble, future diabetes risks, possible growth issues, if she kept eating like a raccoon at a carnival. Gummy bears on mashed potatoes was not a quirky kid thing. It was a habit. At the school, there were no gummy bears. Ashley raged at the salad like it had insulted her personally. She tried bullying the other girls, and they showed her the hard way that intimidation only works when people agree to be scared. One day she picked a fight and got swarmed. No bones broken, but bruises bloomed. She told everyone it wasn't her fault. They should do what I say, she insisted, like saying it enough would make it true. The girls shunned her. Imagine a queen who discovers the crown was paper. Then came the cafeteria knife incident. Ashley climbed onto a table with a kitchen knife in her hand and told the room she wouldn't come down unless she got candy and a ride home. They tried to talk her down. Someone found a couple of wrapped sweets in a teacher's drawer to buy time. In the middle of the pleading and the bargaining, Ashley lost her balance and fell. The world went to slow motion. The fall broke her left arm, cracked her clavicle, and gave her a concussion. That earned her a hospital stay and then, because even the boarding school had limits, a transfer to a children's mental health ward. Words like narcissism started showing up in strained family conversations. I know kids don't get official NPD diagnoses before 18, but professionals said she was marinated in those traits. Therapy was mandatory. Schoolwork continued from inside. Diets became recipes with vegetables. Freedom became a schedule written in dry erase marker. Mom tried to pull her out. Dad refused. The fight escalated in the kitchen, where fights always live. Mom grabbed a glass bottle, sparkling water, the fancy kind, and swung. It shattered on Dad's face. Blood, yelling, 911. Dad went to the ER with a cracked cheekbone and stitches. Mom went in the back of a police car and ended up committed for a while. When she came home, there were medication bottles on the counter and a hollow quiet where her usual running commentary used to be. Later, Dad called it childhood trauma that finally tripped the wire. I didn't ask for details. Some doors you don't open if they're not yours. They talked divorce and then didn't. They sleep in separate rooms now and talk through calendars and bills like coworkers. Mom's job let her work from home with a demotion and a pay cut. The house sits heavier without Ashley's shrieks, which is its own kind of eerie. For my 19th, my grandparents threw a small dinner at a restaurant I love. My parents came. The ward allowed Ashley a short, supervised outing. She looked smaller, thinner, healthier in a way and angrier in every other. When I blew out my candles, she didn't scream. She wept, theatrical, camera-ready tears, saying why. Over and over like repetition could make it profound. Then she slid to the floor and tantrumed because there was no pizza, no presents for her, no prize table. She swore at my parents and tried to storm out like she was reenacting my exit from the year before, as if mimicking the scene would grant her the moral center of it. My parents apologized to the table, bundled her up, and left early. Before they did, Grandpa told them in a low voice he uses for warnings that if they took her to a second party or bought her anything as a consolation, it would never end. Ashley heard him. You could see the calculation die behind her eyes. She went back to the ward the next morning. I don't know the timeline for release. She's stubborn. She also wants what I have, my apartment, my car, my quiet. And she wants it without the part in the middle where you earn those things. That's not an insult. It's a diagnosis of the household she grew up in. I've been careful to keep my distance. No one is putting this on me anymore. Even my parents have stopped hinting at shared blame. They're doing the slow, ugly work of realizing that enabling a narcissistic pattern is its own addiction. Sometimes when Dad talks now, he sounds like a man who found a label maker. Boundaries, triggers, accountability. The words exist in the house at last. That's a start, even if it's late. Side notes and corrections. A few of you called me out for messing up ages and timelines in earlier versions of this story. Fair. I'm bad at math, and, if I'm honest, I also fuzzed some details trying to be anonymous. That ship sailed. Anyone in my family could read this and know. For the record, Ashley was born in June when I was 8. She first blew out my candles when she was 3. The takeover started even earlier than that. On my 9th and 10th birthdays, the gatherings were basically baby show and tell hours. Some extra gifts had my name on them, but were toddler toys only Ashley enjoyed. By 11, there were gifts labeled with her name, and my cake wish belonged to her. From 12 to 18, the venues were built for her attention span. Sometimes she helped me open my gifts, which meant I handed them to her like I was a magician's assistant. Another correction: you can't diagnose a child with NPD. I repeated the word narcissist because that's what my dad said the therapist said she displayed: traits, not a label. There are whispers about a separate disorder my mom carries plus PTSD from things she won't share. It's not my story to tell. She's medicated now and slower, like sound moving through thicker air. Her boss let her keep her job, barely, because she has a sympathetic supervisor who understands the math of tragedy. Also, I don't celebrate on my actual birthday anymore. Last year's makeup party was a week into August, and that date feels clean. Late July is stained. Cake tastes better in August. Life now. People ask how I'm doing. The short answer is learning. Learning that a budget is just a list of decisions you already made before you walk into a store. Learning that laundry becomes less hateful when you do it before you run out of socks. Learning that stress doesn't vanish when you move out. It just changes costumes. Some days I wake up and my chest is tight for no reason. Coffee can be a friend and a liar. My boss at the shop, Mr. Alvarez, pulled me aside last week and said I looked like a live wire. He sent me home early. I walked the long way, past the ball field, watched a pickup game until the sun set, and felt the electricity bleed off into the dirt. I'm looking for a free support group or a sliding scale counselor because I can feel the old stuff pooling in the corners of my mind when I'm not careful. There's no shame in more help. Your brain is an organ, not a moral scorecard. Home is a 400-square-foot studio with a rattling window unit and a view of the alley. I've learned the neighbors' rhythms. The nurse who leaves at 6 a.m. The guy with the motorcycle who somehow always revs it exactly when I'm trying to nap. The kid who practices trumpet at odd hours and is, against all odds, getting better. I bought a cheap bookshelf off a curb and sanded it down, and now it holds my few books, a couple of picture frames, and a coffee mug that says, "World's okayest brother," which a coworker gave me as a joke. It makes me smile every time. The Volvo runs smooth since the glass replacement, and I vacuum it every other Sunday like a ritual. I keep a little trash bag hanging from the gear shift so it doesn't slowly turn into a teenage boy's backpack. I named the car Gladys because it's a grandma name and the car feels like it's seen things and survived. When the sun hits the dash, the car smells faintly like the cleaner my grandpa used, and sometimes I feel 12 again in the best possible way. A kid in a quiet garage, holding a flashlight while a man who loves me says, "Right there, Jake. Keep the light steady." A word about family. I have complicated gratitude for my relatives. The night of the pink cake, the crowd finally turned, and that mattered. It also matters that they didn't turn for years, even though they saw. Shame catalyzed the car gift more than generosity. I know because I saw the receipt when I registered Gladys. $2,000 for the car, plus parts and tires. My grandpa did the work. My grandma deep cleaned the interior until it smelled like laundry and lemons. I am thankful. I am also keeping my distance. Both are true at once. We're the kind of family where the patriarch's opinion sets the weather. If Grandpa Frank is with you, storms part. If he's against you, the picnic's canceled. That's not a healthy ecosystem, and I'm trying to build my life without recreating it. But I can admit, when he stood between me and my parents that night and said, "This stops," I felt a kind of safety I hadn't felt since before Ashley could walk. Ashley still. People keep comparing Ashley to Eric Cartman. I get it. She's less round now, thanks to vegetables and portion control, but the habits are still there in her mind. She thinks in trades and ultimatums. I do X if you give me Y. She calls herself a princess less often, but she still arranges the world on an imaginary chessboard with herself as the queen. She's smart, tested around 110 IQ from what I've heard, and dangerous when she aims it at people's soft spots. She lost friends for being bossy and learned the wrong lesson, that the friends were jealous. Now she's learning the right lesson the hard way. Respect is not a coupon you can cut out of someone else's patience. The ward keeps records and rules. She can't finesse cameras. She can't lie her way out of time-stamped facts. When she threatens to hurt herself to get what she wants, there are professionals who step in. It sounds harsh to say this, but it's a relief to know strangers are better at keeping my sister alive than my parents were at telling her no. As for what she said about me, she blames me some days and blames our parents more on others. Her logic about my stuff is still a child's logic. What's hers is hers. What's mine should also be hers. She's jealous that I have a place and a car and a spare set of keys that don't belong to her. She wants outcomes without the middle part where you eat rice and eggs for a week so you can pay for new tires. Why write this? Someone asked why I keep talking about it if I want to move on. Here's the truth. Telling it out loud drains the poison. It makes me less likely to hand the same poison to someone I love one day. I don't want to be the dad who didn't notice what his choices did to his kid. I want to be the guy who shows up with a cake that matches the name on it and the number of candles that matches the years, even if the kid shrugs and says he doesn't care about cake. I want to be the man who tells his son, "This day is yours," and then proves it in a dozen small, ordinary ways. If you're a parent reading this and feeling defensive, I'm not writing to attack you. I'm writing to show you a map of one kind of harm, the kind where you choose the easier piece now and buy an avalanche later. If you have 2 kids, and one keeps ending up at the center, take a breath and move your body. Change the seating chart. Light the candles in front of the right person. You don't need a therapist to tell you that. You just need a spine for the next 5 minutes. If you're the older sibling who recognizes yourself in this, listen, you are not crazy, and you are not weak for wanting your own piece of cake. You are not petty for wanting your own day. I hope you get out. I hope you find a couch that squeaks under your weight and a key you can twirl, and a car that smells like cleaner, and a job where a guy like Mr. Alvarez tells you to go take a walk when your eyes look like live wires. I hope you build a life so quiet and solid that when someone tries to yank it away, there's a weight to it. Where I'm headed, I'm very low contact with my parents. I'll probably see them at Thanksgiving or Christmas because that's how our family works, and because I love my grandparents and they are old enough to make every holiday feel like a limited edition print. When I see my parents, I'll be polite. I won't pretend. If they apologize, I'll say thank you and keep my coat on. If they ask forgiveness like it's a switch I can flip to make them feel better, I'll tell them it's not that kind of light. I'm looking for a men's group in town that doesn't revolve around yelling or telling each other to grind harder. I want a room where people tell the messy truth and then pass the chips. I'm building routines that don't depend on anyone else's approval. Sunday laundry, Tuesday trash, Thursday call grandpa to ask how the tomatoes are doing, Saturday walk by the water with a cheap coffee. I'm learning how to sit with a feeling until it changes shape. I'm learning how to say no without explaining. And I'm learning, most importantly, that my birthday is a day like any other until I choose it. This August, a week after the anniversary of the belated party, I'm going to buy a small cake from the bakery that writes names clean and straight. I'm going to ask for exactly the number of candles I'm turning. I'm going to invite 2 friends. We're going to sing the regular song. I'll make a wish that belongs only to me. Then I'll blow out the candles once, and we'll eat cake that tastes like sugar and not like compromise. If no one shows up, I'll still light the candles. I'll still make the wish. Because I'm not the spare. If you read this far, thanks for letting me get it all out. I feel lighter every time I say it plain. Maybe that's all healing is. Telling the truth until it weighs less.